We've been watching Going Headlines right here on Good Morning Africa, the weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, Africa. It's always fun to be with you. Now, up next, we will be going current. And this morning, we bring you some very interesting people. But before we tell you what we're talking about, what do you know about SAMRO?
About SAMRO? I think it stands for South African Musical Rights Organization. I think, ding, 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 ding.
You got it right. You got it right. You got it right. Well, up next, I'm going current. Taryn had a chat with Kgomotso and Keitumetse. Now, together, they are the representatives from SAMRO. So let's hear what they have to share with us this morning.
Sanibonani, Kgomotso, and to your biggest and brightest breakfast show, Good Morning Africa. I'm going current this morning. I have in studio two representatives from SAMRO, that would be the South African Music Rights Organization, and I have with me Kgomotso and Keitumetse. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Looking lovely on this very cold morning. Thank you so much for coming here today to talk about SAMRO. For those of our viewers, especially in Africa, who are not aware of what SAMRO is and what you do, please can you tell us briefly?
Okay. SAMRO is an acronym which stands for the Southern African Music Rights Organization. It was formed in 1961 with the sole purpose of protecting the intellectual property of composers as well as authors, and also to ensure that the music of those composers and authors is adequately remunerated for every time it is used. So we do that by collecting licenses from various bodies. We collect licenses from nightclubs, from radios, from television broadcasters, from retailers. From there, we then distribute the royalties to all our members. That's what SAMRO does in a nutshell.
Okay, and in terms of radio stations, how does that work?
Okay, how it works is that firstly, when a broadcaster starts broadcasting, we would obviously meet with the relevant people, just find out how much music is used, because, you know, as already alluded to by Kgomotso, it's really about the music, remuneration for music that's used. So we would sit down with the station just to find out how much music will be used, and then dependent on that, a license fee will be determined that will be paid by the broadcaster to SAMRO from time to time.
And why does SAMRO collect these licensing fees?
We collect the licensing fees, and then after collecting the licensing fees, we then distribute those fees as royalties to our artists. That's the main reason why we collect licensing fees, to distribute royalties.
If I've done a collaboration, there's say 2 of us, 3 of us, we've written a song and I go to SAMRO, but I decide, actually, I'm not going to include their name in this, I'm just going to put my name on the song, and it ends up being that person's song. What about those other 2 people? Do they have any say or any rights?
We've had quite a few of those cases where at the notification process or the registration of the work process, not all the names were put forward. What usually happens in that case is that we encourage each and every person who's responsible for creating any type of music to come to SAMRO and register their work. It's your responsibility as a musician or as a composer or as an author to protect your copyright. So if you do not do that from the onset, it becomes very difficult later on to come back and say, by the way, I was involved in that song. So we always encourage people at the creation process of the music, come to SAMRO and register your music, register your work.
And is there a difference between authors and composers in terms of licensing fees if their song is heard or played? Because you might have one person that's doing the music, that's composed the music, the other person that's written the music. How does that work?
The percentages are usually determined at the registration process. Usually the people involved in the song give us the percentages themselves. The other one would say, I was responsible for this, and maybe they get 20, 25, and whatever percentages, and maybe 50-50. So those percentages are determined at the registration processes. Okay. After we collected all the licensing fees, we calculate based on those percentages, and we distribute accordingly.
Can you help us identify when we need to get a license and what that actual process is? Because maybe for a first timer it's a little bit daunting, and you're going into SAMRO, you don't know where to go, you don't know what to do. So what is the process step?
Okay. How it works is that there is a division specifically put there to ensure that everybody who uses music in public gets to be licensed. So if you're going to be, for instance, let's take an example of a broadcaster. Once an announcement is made, perhaps by ICASA, to say a license has been granted to so-and-so radio station or TV station, the people within our division will then contact the relevant people at the broadcaster to say, congratulations, we understand that you've been granted a license, and then we just need you to understand the implications of instances if you're going to use music in your broadcasting. Then we go through the process of identifying how much music and it's going to be used in that broadcast, and depending on how much music is going to be used and whether the music that's going to be used is most repertoire, then an application form will be completed and processed, and then a license will be issued.
Just to elaborate on what Keitu is saying, because we do get those queries a lot. When do I need to acquire a license? When you use someone else's music to generate profit for yourself, you need to pay a license because you're using someone else's copyright or intellectual property to actually benefit yourself. So any kind of business that plays music needs to have a license, be it a retailer, a nightclub, a radio stations like I've already alluded to. You need to be licensed if you're going to be using someone else's music to generate some form of profit.
And if you have original music that you'd like to protect, what is that process like?
The process for protecting music is you either call SAMRO or you visit our offices. Our consultants are always available to help with such queries. You just bring your ID, you bring your music, the music that you want to register, be it on an MP3 format. That's just the process. You just register with your ID as well as the CD, the music that you want to be registered.
And what is the difference between license revenue and the actual fee that the musicians get?
Okay, the difference there is just in terms of which side it's on. As in, at the point where we collect license fees from broadcasters, that is referred to as license fees, and then at the point that the very same revenue is then paid out to distributed to owners of the copyright that was specifically used, then it's called royalties.
So we collect license fees, but we distribute royalties.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
And what are some of the consequences if people do not have their music licensed? Who keeps track of these things?
Well, we have a music usage department. What happens is that users would, depending on how it was agreed to, others would submit on a monthly basis, others maybe quarterly, lists of music that was used in their broadcasts or that were broadcast at their restaurants and all that. So what happens would be that once we then receive license fees, we check as to whose music was then played, then such people will be remunerated accordingly. But then there are researchers within the music usage department that ensure that with respect to music that belongs to people that are not registered, they then contact the relevant people to say, we realize that your music has been played and you're not registered, and then negotiations can ensue from there.
You're saying earlier, if they generate a profit from playing this music, then they should be licensed. But what if it's a non-profit radio station? They're just playing it for their community. Or what if it's an online radio station? Do the same rules apply?
Well, because as Kgomotso said, it's someone's property. A musical work is someone's property. So whether you're using it for profit or non-profit, you're still using someone's profit. So that person has to be remunerated accordingly. It's only that then when the licensing happens, we will take that into account to say this is a non-profit organization, so we take that into account when coming up with a license fee.
And how important is it that artists actually copyright their music? Because, like you said, all these strange things happen and people decide, ooh, that's a nice song. It's not registered. I'm going to say that it's my song, you generate a profit from it, and then you can't prove that it is. So how important that artists out there, whether you're a composer, author, register with SAMRO?
It's very important that composers and authors register their work, because that's the only way you can protect intellectual property. Just like anybody else who starts a business, you copyright the logo, you copyright the type of business that you do. So as an artist, as a composer, you also see yourself. You should see yourself as a business as well. You are in the business of music, and you should treat yourself as such and protect what it is that you own, which is your intellectual property.
Thank you very much, ladies, for waking up so early, coming out of your nice warm beds and dressing up and coming to meet with me. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, chatting about SAMRO. If our viewers would like more information about SAMRO, do you have a website or email address?
We do have a website. I would encourage them to go onto www.samro.org.za, or alternatively they can call us on 011-712-8000.
Thank you very much, ladies.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
It's been lovely.
And thank you to our viewers across Africa for joining us this morning. If you have any comments, questions, queries for us here at Good Morning Africa, please don't hesitate to send us an email. Our address is gma@planetimage.co.za. Enjoy the rest of your morning, and back to the guys in studio.
Okay, Africa, now that you know all about SAMRO, remember that if you have questions for Kgomotso and Keitumetse, you can always send them to gma@planetimage.co.za. And not just questions to those two representatives from SAMRO, but we also like to hear from you as to what are your favorite holiday destinations in this beautiful continent of ours right here in Africa. I want to know where you'd like to go, and maybe I may pop in. Who knows?
Actually, I want to know where you'd like to go.